Hello everybody, Infinite Shinjo here, and welcome back to the second part of my Hunter x Hunter discussion. In the last part, which I don't remember when it was posted earlier this year, I know for sure. But in that video, I discussed the Hunter exam arc, the Phantom Troop arc, and the Heaven's Arena arc to an extent. So, I finally come to the point. I have finally finished Hunter x Hunter. Actually, by the time that I posted the first video, I was almost done with the Chimera Ant arc. So, I figured to just post it, then I could get some time to record this, edit this, make a thumbnail, and then post this one. Because, oh boy, this is gonna be, I don't want to say a long video. You'll find out if it's a long video when it's on. But I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on Greed Island, Chimera Ant, and the election arc. Then I'm going to be talking about my favorite highlights from the show, my favorite character or characters, and finally my ranking of all of the arcs as a whole. But I'm not going to waste any more time because there is a lot to unpack in here, so let's just get started. And for the record, I didn't write out any notes for this, so this is going to be a lot more impromptu than the last video. So if that's why it seems a bit scatterbrained, that's why. So first up, you have the Greed Island arc. And after the heavier tone that the Phantom Troop arc had, it's a little bit nice to have a little bit of a lighter story, at least compared to the Phantom Troop arc. The Greed Island arc is still kind of dark in a sense, because I think they took a sort of SAO approach that if you get injured in the game, you get injured in real life. And then there's also some plot about how Greed Island is actually in the real world or something. It's a little bit fuzzy in my head on how it actually works. I can't remember. But outside of that, the basic plot is Gon and Killua just collecting cards. It's literally just an RPG style game in the series. But it does introduce a couple of interesting and memorable characters. Obviously, first is Bisky. Then they also introduced Genthru the Bomber, Razor, Sisagera, and a whole bunch of other people. Even the guy right next to Sisagera on the poster, I think his name is Gorinyu. And that's one thing that I'll touch on more a bit later, is even with an arc like the Greed Island arc, which isn't as long compared to other arcs, I can even remember these characters' names. Obviously, Bisky does come back, so it makes sense that I would remember her. But characters like Genthru the Bomber or Razor, they don't really have as much of a role because they're only shown in this arc and nothing else, but still I can remember their names. But it does allow Gon and Killua to perfect their Nen, and allow Gon to start using his Jaijunken, and Killua to start using his electricity powers. So that's a definite plus. It's a nice follow-up to them being trained by Wing before. But honestly, there's not really much else I can say about this arc. The story of it is pretty interesting, although the whole card collecting aspect is kind of weird. And the main reason Gon went into the game is to find Jing. But as it turns out, there's no hint of finding Jing in the game, except for a little hint that he finds near the end, and then they transport to where they think he is, which is a very nice transition into the Chimera Ant arc, because the person that Gon and Killua meet by transporting is Kite. And then from there, Gon and Killua learn about the Chimera Ant species, and essentially through generations and generations of breeding, they essentially create these human-monster hybrids that have the ability to use Nen. At least some of them do. And I gotta be honest, when I was looking through the episodes on how long the Chimera Ant arc was, I was surprised to find out it was 60 plus episodes. And I thought, this is gonna get old very quickly. And I don't want to say it got old. It did get a little bit drawn out because literally every other episode that narrator comes in and says, hey, this is what Gon is thinking. This is what Killua is thinking. Now I can understand why they made that joke in Anime House 2's video about them in their inner monologue all the time, because it is played to the extreme here. But to go off of what I said in the last arc, I can remember the characters that were introduced here very vividly. Of course, I watched it a lot more recently than Greed Island, but I can remember Moro, Nov, Knuckle, Shoot. Not sure if I really want to, but I can remember Poof, Youpi, and... what's the name? Give me a minute. Let me see, I said Poof and Youpi, so I'm thinking of the cat. What's their name? I don't want to say her name, even though a lot of people think it's a her. Oh. Crap, I can't remember her name. My mind's literally gone blank. P2, that's her name. It's kind of weird that I don't remember P2, and I remember Youpi and Poof. But it would take too much time for me to go over each thing individually and jump from one point to the other, so I'll just take it in the chronological line that the story took. I really like the whole Gon, Killua, and Kite traveling to the Chimera Ant's nest. That's really exciting. The whole thing about the Chimera Ants giving birth and more Chimera Ants coming out, that's cool. And then the moment where Kite gets attacked by P2, that was something that was unexpected for me, and I'm sure a lot of people as well. Then when Gon and Killua have to retreat and go to fight Knuckle and Shoot respectively to be allowed to go into the NGL, one thing that I remember from that scene is I was watching it. It was like the last battle. Gon was facing Knuckle, Killua was facing Shoot, and I remember they just cut, and I'm thinking, don't tell me, Gon and Killua are gonna be able to make it, of course, just like always. And then next thing I see, oh, Gon's got a little creature on his shoulder, I wonder what that means. Then they say, oh, you can't use Nen. Oh, you're not able to go to NGL. So I'm thinking, wait, they didn't win? Because with a lot of shonen, a lot of anime in general, you always expect that the main character and any of their friends is going to win regardless. Unless you're somebody like Ash Ketchum, who doesn't necessarily win all the time. With shonen, it's just like, oh, they're gonna pull something out of their butt and win at the very end. And even though I liked the first part of the arc with introducing Kite, introducing the rest of his gang, introducing Knuckle and Shoot, Gon and Killua's fight against them, I feel like after that moment is where things get heavy. Because you got Gon, who is determined to take down P2 after what she did to Kite, after what they did to Kite. I'm probably gonna say she a couple of times in here, so fair warning. But then you got Gon, who's determined to take P2 down, and you got Killua, who's just like, gee, Gon's acting a little bit different. Then when Gon gets access to his Nen again, you can tell something's different about him. And him, Killua, Moro, Nov, the whole shebang, everybody goes to take on the Chimera Ants, and Killua can even tell something's different about Gon. And I feel like now's a good stopping point to bring up Miriam, or the King, technically, as he's known as in this point of the story. He arrives, he basically rejects all the traditions that they had before, and decides, oh, I'm gonna rule. Oh, Poof, Youpi, and P2, you're gonna be my royal guards. Come with me, we're gonna rule somewhere else. And that creates a division with the Chimera Ants. And that makes it even better when Meloran and Ikalgo, I'm probably butchering their names, decide to go over to Gon's side. But I think the bread and butter of this arc, the best part of this arc, is Komugi. Because Komugi, when she's first introduced, you think, oh, she's not going to provide much to the story. But she's the catalyst that brings along Miriam's humanity. She's the one that proves that he actually has a heart. Because you even see beforehand Miriam facing off against the best champions of board games in the world, and when he wins, he just straight up kills them. He doesn't do that with Komugi. Something different about her, he just can't place it. And I feel like it's a combination of him being surprised at how good at the game she is and how genuine she is. Because you can tell that there's a genuinity. Is that a word? You can tell there's some sort of genuine tone with how she presents herself. And no lie, before they even said it, I had a feeling that she was going to be blind. Which that definitely helps, because if Komugi wouldn't have been blind, the story wouldn't have worked. Because she would have saw Miriam, saw Pitou, saw Youpi, saw Poof, everybody, and she'd just freak out. Understandably. But the fact that she's blind kind of makes her a bridge in the gap between the humans and the Chimera Ants. Then you got the Hunter Extermination Squad, Gon, Killua, Moro, Nav, everybody, Knuckle, Shoot, the 2 Chimera Ants that joined them, all saying, okay, Gon, Killua, you take on Pitou, Knuckle, Shoot, you take on Youpi, Moro, you take on Poof, and Netero is left with the king. Everything seems all well and good, but of course, as plans go, they don't always go according to plan. They even mentioned there might be a third party in this that they didn't account for. That third party being Komugi, when she gets injured by Netero and Zeno's Dragon Dive attack when they're trying to infiltrate the castle. And that in turn has Pitou go to heal Komugi as per the king's wishes. Gon comes in, sees Kite in that situation, becomes enraged, and that climax for him and Pitou's face-off, that was just amazing. And even not to discount Gon and what he does in this arc, but the fact that Netero basically sacrifices himself to try and take down the king, which doesn't even work. But then the very end of the arc with Miriam and Komugi, I don't think there's anything that I need to say about it. I'm trying not to go into detail on explaining every little part of this arc, but that's the best way I can explain that I really enjoy this arc. It's a bit long, but I'll be lying if I said it wasn't worth it. And the final arc, and sadly the most recent installment of Hunter x Hunter, is the election arc, which, being 12 episodes, isn't really that difficult to explain the plot of. Basically, with Netero gone, the 12 Zodiacs have to hold an election in order to get a new chairman. Meanwhile, Gon, who's in critical condition in the hospital after his face-off with Pitou, because he had to basically sacrifice everything in order to use that much power to take Pitou down, Killua decides to enlist his sister Alluka, or brother Nanaka, or whatever way you want to slice it. He decides to bring them along to heal Gon, but meanwhile he's being tracked by Illumi, Hisoka, the Zodic Butlers are here as well. But at the end, you know, Alluka is able to heal Gon, the chairman is elected, and that's the arc. Quite frankly, I feel like this is one of the weaker arcs, but it's not really anything like, oh, I didn't like this part of it. It's because the way they approach it. Like, for example, I would have liked it a little bit more if it would have just been Killua enlisting Alluka to help him heal Gon while being tracked by Illumi, Hisoka, the Butlers, whoever else they want to include, and that's it. But the whole election thing seems like a little bit of an added thing, and they just jump from one to the other. Although, I guess, in a sense, I see why they did it, because after Gon's healed, he goes to the place where the election's being held at. He sees Leorio there, who's running for office for basically just punching Jing, and that's it. And then he meets Jing, they have their heartfelt moment, and there we go. But for the amazing arcs that Hunter x Hunter does do, this one is trying to be split between two, even at sometimes three different arcs, because you got Killua with Alluka, Gon in the hospital, and Leorio in the election or whatever. The other thing I will say is I do like how the characters that were in the show from last arc, like Moro, Nav, Knuckle Shoot, Miloran, Ikalgo, Palm even. I didn't mention Palm in the Chimera Ant arc, but I really like her as well. But I like how they have all those characters there, but not all of them speak. Even the first time that they're having the election, they have cameos from characters that were in the show before, like Sizagera, I think a couple other ones, I just can't think of their names off the top of my head. But as a wrap-up, I really enjoy it, but as its own standalone arc, I feel like it's a little bit too scattered. But those are my thoughts on each arc, but before I go, there are a couple other minor things that I want to go over. I was going to make a separate video on my thoughts on the show as a whole, but I can just wrap it up nicely in here. So for starters, my favorite moments from the show, I think one that has to be mentioned is Gon's anger facing Pitou for the last time. And even not discounting that fight, but Killua and Gon's interaction near the end when Pitou's about to strike with her head off. Because then it's just like, oh, Gon's arm is off, and the instant that happened, I figured Gon's gonna say, nah, it's okay, now I can be like Kite. And I'm thinking, no, why do you have to punch me in the heart like this? But another moment in this show that I feel needs to be mentioned is back in the Heavens Arena when Gon is facing off against Hisoka. Because prior to this, their agreement was Gon will have the tag, he'll give it back to Hisoka once he punches Hisoka in the face, just like Hisoka did in the previous arc. Then when Gon's able to punch Hisoka in the face and give back the tag, that's just a cool moment. And I feel it goes underrated because of Gon's anger versus Pitou. But you're going to have to let me know what some of your favorite moments from this show are, because there are a lot of them. But like I said in the last video, Killua is still up there as one of my favorite characters. I feel like out of all the four main cast, Kurapika, Leorio, Gon, and Killua, Killua is the one that shows the most development, arguably. Next is probably Gon, because Killua comes from an assassin family, and thanks to Gon, he turns his life around. The only other one I can see is Gon, because he has experience with death thanks to Kite, and at the same time, Kurapika is even in a different position than what he was when the show started. Although, I will admit I'm a bit upset that he gets shafted near the end, because Kurapika is shown in the Hunter Exam arc, not present in the Heavens Arena arc, comes back in the Phantom Troop arc just to wrap up his story, barely shown in Greed Island, barely shown in the Chimera Ant arc, only shown in other scenes apart from the other three in the election arc. And that's just a bit upsetting, because I think I even mentioned in the last video with the Phantom Troop arc, okay, Kurapika's story is wrapped up, I hope they don't shaft him. And they kinda do. Even Leorio to an extent. Now, I mean, I know that Leorio is going to be a doctor or whatever, but Leorio is essentially the third wheel to Gon and Killua a lot of the time. He's just like Kurapika in the Hunter Exam arc, not in the Heavens Arena arc much, comes back in the Phantom Troop arc to try and help them raise money. He leaves when the Greed Island arc starts, Chimera Ant arc nowhere to be found. He comes back during the election arc just to be jokingly nominated, and I would have loved for Leorio to actually make it, just for that little touch of it's just like, oh yeah, that would have been nice. But then when Gon brings up he's gonna be a doctor, yeah, I kind of forgot about that. So Gon makes a good point. He knows about his friends more than I do. But to wrap up this video, let me rank all of the arcs. So that would be Hunter Exam, Heavens Arena, Phantom Troop, Greed Island, Chimera Ant, and the election arc. I know that there's also a Dark Continent arc going on in the manga, but I'm only counting the anime parts because that's all that I watched. So I thought hard about this, and it's gonna be hard to put any of these at the bottom, but I think at number 6, I'm gonna put Greed Island. Greed Island's a fun arc, but the card game aspect to it is a little bit to get used to, and if you don't care to know the rules about that, then it's essentially an arc you don't care about. Now, I do still really enjoy the arc. Their face-off against Razor is one of my favorite moments from that arc. But when it's essentially the standard isekai that every anime has to do, kind of just there. It does introduce Bisky, so I will give it that, but I just like the other arcs a little bit better. I think at 5 is going to be the election arc, because, like I said with my problem with it before, it's kind of scattered, but I put it a little bit above Greed Island because it does wrap up Gon being healed, meeting his father. It wraps up everything in a nice little bow that if it ends up not getting any more seasons, I'll be quite alright with that. But when you introduce 11 characters from the Zodiac, who essentially don't matter after this, as far as I know, and an election, which kind of rude for me to say this after the reason that the election is happening, but I didn't really care too much about the election. It is sad that Netero was gone, but didn't really care too much about the election part. I was more concerned with Killua with Aluka trying to heal Gon. So what's next? 4 is gonna be the Heaven's Arena arc. Just like Greed Island, it's nice, but it doesn't really do much. It introduces the concept of Nen. I'm very aware of that. It does introduce Wing and Zushi, whatever his name is, but they don't really show up much outside of that, outside of cameos. Fight with Gon and Hisoka is really interesting as well, but unfortunately that's the only real part that I can really give it. The fights are good, but I feel like number 4 is still a good spot for the Heaven's Arena arc. Number 3 is going to be the Phantom Troop arc. I did enjoy the Phantom Troop arc. The Phantom Troop are probably one of my favorite enemy groups in any sort of anime, but at the same time, it's kind of there. It's certainly a good arc. It certainly sets the precedence for what the other arc's darker tone is going to be, but Killua and Gon are just trying to get money for part of the arc. Then 10, 12 episodes in, they eventually get tangled up in the arc, and then it's just like, oh, the Phantom Troop faked their own death with mannequins, essentially. And then it's just like, okay, how long is this game of cat and mouse going to go on for? I did still enjoy it, but at the same time, with Hisoka planning to fight Chrollo the whole time, and then at the end, oh, you can't use Nen? Well, bye, and just leave him. That's kind of a troll. And I know about trolls because I watched Pariston Hill. And I'm sure in the grand scale of things, everything that happens in the Phantom Troop arc is important, but there were just times that I was waiting for the next big thing to happen. It's not a bad arc by any means, none of these arcs are, but Phantom Troop has to take the 3. And I think without question, number 2 is the Hunter Exam arc. It does a good job introducing Gon, Killua, Leorio, Kurapika, and even minor characters like Tompa, Netero, who is kind of a minor character at that point but comes back later, and all the other Hunter Exam people that are with him, like Hanzo, the introduction of Gitaraka or Illumi, Hisoka. It does a good job introducing all of those characters, and it's not really too drawn out that I'm just sitting there waiting for, what is this? What is the point of this? While they do have different challenges that they have to go through with the Hunter Exam arc, neither one is drawn out too far. And so that means, by default, number 1 is the Chimera Ant arc. Kind of ironic that I put the longest arc at the top, but it's kind of the opposite of what I said with the Phantom Troop arc. I said even with the episodes that it had, a couple of the things that it didn't really seem like it made sense. And I will admit with the Chimera Ant arc, the narrator does get grating at times. It does get annoying. but at the same time, everything has its purpose. Gon and Killua losing to Knuckle and Shoot gives Gon time to recover his Nen and build up his anger towards Pitou. And that climax of Gon beating the living heck out of Pitou is just so refreshing. Even though it's kind of sad to say, because at that point, with Pitou willingly healing Komugi as per the king's orders, and Pitou just saying, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but Kite's already dead. And it's just like, at that point, you kind of feel bad for Pitou, and kind of make you want Gon to not actually win. Which, I didn't mention it in the Chimera Ant discussion that I did. I like how the king and Gon essentially switch sides during that arc. The king starts as a ruthless killer, but turns compassionate. Gon starts as compassionate, but essentially turns into a killer. I like that contrast that they have there. And that alone is why the Chimera Ant arc is my favorite arc of all time. But that's my second part of this discussion on Hunter x Hunter. Not to worry, I got a whole bunch of other Hunter x Hunter videos planned, and they're probably already out by now. I can guarantee they're already out by now. I'm gonna start doing Hunter x Hunter fan-made openings. So look forward to that. Let me know what you thought about hiatus down in the comment section. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant Hunter x Hunter. Let me know what you think about that down in the comment section. What are your favorite moments of the show? What are your favorite characters of the show? And I'm probably gonna put something either in the title or in the thumbnail or something about spoilers. So just on the off chance you wanted to watch this spoiler free, that's not gonna be an option. So yeah, let me know all that down in the comment section, and I will see you in the next video. Momentai.